Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the What to Expect During Your Stage 1 Audit webinar. My name is Joseph Krolikowski, and I am the Technical Director for Perry Johnson Registrars. Couple of quick notes for everyone. All participants are in mute, but we absolutely want to address your questions, so please use the question portion of the dashboard. We will take your questions at the conclusion of the presentation. I'll also note for everyone that copies of our presentation are going to be available for download shortly after we're finished, and that this webinar, like all other PJR webinars, is available for reviewing on our website under previously recorded webinars. Our topics for today, we're going to discuss why a two-stage process is mandated. We're going to discuss the steps that lead up to the Stage 1 audit. These are going to include the quotation phase and some steps following the quotation phase. We'll look at the Stage 1 audit kind of front to back, give you a sense of what the expectations are. We have a special section on things that can prevent continuance to the Stage 2 audit, and we'll address again expectations and how you can address those concerns. We will address your readiness for the Stage 2, and then we will conclude with your questions. Now, why is there a two-stage process? Well, the short answer is because we have to do it that way. We are held accountable to a number of requirements as a certification body, and those include the requirements from ISO 17021, which is the standard, the primary standard that PJR is accredited to. Now, that standard includes a clause that reads as follows. The initial certification audit of a management system shall be conducted in two stages, Stage 1 and Stage 2. Now, the larger purpose behind the two-stage process is it's intended to ensure that only those companies that are truly ready for the certification assessment, only those companies will be permitted to go through the full audit. Obviously, there's a great deal of expense associated with conducting a full audit. A lot of work should have been done, so we want to make sure that those companies that are truly prepared are the ones that go through the full assessment. Now, everything begins at the quotation phase. Obviously, you must be a PJR contracted client before PJR can perform a Stage 1 audit at your facility. And we use a series of applications. They're scope specific. They're referred to as the F1 series of documents. And we use those to try to help facilitate the steps to follow, including the Stage 1 audit. The F1 documents are complex. They're a little daunting, but they are intended to gather a multitude of information. And the idea is that the more information we can gather about you initially, we can be more competitive in our quote, and we're also going to be better prepared for the actual Stage 1 audit. So obviously, when you're filling out the F1, it is best to give us as detailed a response as possible. It's going to help us identify any logistical issues, readiness issues. It's a good idea to be as thorough as possible in completing that document. Now, you may be wondering, how do we go about calculating audit time? And why does my little company have to have, for example, a 2.5-day Stage 2 audit? Well, we do have a certain amount of discretion in audit time, but as a certified certification body, as an accredited certification body, we are held accountable to the rules of the industry. And when it comes to audit time, that is where the International Accreditation Forum, or IAF, mandatory document 5 comes into play. MD5, as it's referred to, gives us some discounts that we can apply. But it also stipulates that the maximum amount of discounted time that we can award is 30%. Now you can read MD5 for yourself on the IAF website. I've provided the website here. Obviously we want to try to be as competitive as we possibly can, but we also have to be sure that we are not violating MD5 when we are assigning audit time to a prospective client. Now, prior to the stage 1, there's a couple of things that are going to happen after you have been officially signed up as a client. You're going to be assigned to what we refer to as an audit program coordinator. Now, you will more commonly refer to this person as your scheduler. Now, the scheduler is intended to be your primary point of contact for just about everything. Think of them as cradle-to-grave client management. They're the ones that are obviously going to assign the auditor for you and make sure that the auditor is qualified in the standard that you're seeking and also competent in your technical area, because we do have to fulfill both of those criteria in the assigning of an auditor. Now, obviously, if we can find somebody in your local area, so much the better. But our primary concern is making sure that they are qualified in the standard and competent in your technical area. Now, ahead of the actual stage 1 audit, you're going to receive what you will note it is an attestation of readiness. We call it the F108 series of documents. Now, the F108 series of documents, what those require, they require you to officially state that you're ready for the stage 1 audit. And it presents a long list of things that you need to say, yes, we have that. Yes, we have that. Now, obviously, it's going to vary a little bit from scope to scope, but these are some of the more common things that you're going to find on the F108. Do you have a scope for your system? Have you considered exemptions? Do you know what your processes are? Do you know how your processes interact? Do you have the established measurables for your processes? Do you have data for those measurables? Have you completed the F191? Now, we'll be talking about that just a little bit later today. Have you had an internal audit? Have you had a management review? And so forth. So there's a whole list of things, and again, these are scope specific. We do have these for all of the different standards and combinations of standards that we audit to. Let's talk a little bit more about that F191. Now, the F191, historically, we've had it for a very long time. It is a point of confusion for many of our clients. The F191 is intended to serve pretty much one specific purpose. It's intended to give you a place to document what are my processes, what are the processes that I've established, and then to further state, for my processes, here's how my processes fit into the requirements of the standard that I'm seeking certification to. And the idea is that hopefully you have established a sufficient number of processes that all of the applicable requirements have been fulfilled. That's kind of the larger picture. Now, the idea is that you're going to take whatever you've documented your processes on, the interaction of processes being the best example, and assign the clause numbers accordingly. So let's work our way through an example here. Let's say that this was your interaction of processes. Now, you'll note that this company has prepared kind of a process flow, but they've also given us a key as to what their actual processes are. And you'll note that there are 6 of them: sales order entry, purchasing, production, shipping, quality, and support. Okay, so 6 processes. We're going to take those 6 processes now and organize them on the F-191. Okay, so here's our 6 processes, same ones. And here are the clauses of the standard. In this particular case, this presumes that it is one of the Annex SL rooted standards, such as ISO 9001-2015, ISO 14001-2015, and so forth. And you'll note that every single clause number, with the exception of 8.3, has some kind of notation indicating that one or more of these processes is contributing to the fulfillment of these requirements. And that's kind of the big idea with F-191. This gives us a means of knowing, okay, these are the processes that they've established, and this is what they're standing behind in terms of fulfilling the standard. Now, when the stage 1 takes place, typically it's going to be conducted on site. Now, we do offer off-site stage 1s, and there is some savings in travel costs, but you have to remember that there is more on-site time in total in doing it this way, because we do have to close out the stage 1 at the front end of the on-site stage 2. So you will save some travel expense, but the total on-site audit time is a bit more when the off-site stage 1 is done. Now, before the auditor arrives, before the stage 1 takes place, you should be contacted by that auditor at least a few days in advance, whether it's being done on-site or not. You should also expect to receive an audit plan. And it's going to be important for you to confirm that what's on the audit plan is accurate, and obviously let your auditor know if it isn't accurate. The audit, like all other audits, will commence with an opening meeting. This is a good chance for you to confirm any last-minute changes, to make sure the auditor is aware of any critical information, etc. If you're going to have a customer coming in later that day, it might be good to let the auditor know. And if you've got a key person that's going to be not arriving until later, again, good information to share with the auditor. From the opening meeting, obviously, the stage 1 will commence. Now, the auditor is going to use a PJR stage 1 workbook to record the results of their assessments. Now, just about everything that's reviewed in a stage 1 audit is documentation based in nature. We talked about going through what are the processes, have you had an internal audit, what are your measurables. So for the most part, you should expect that the auditor is going to probably stay in your conference room or whatever space you've assigned for the auditor to work from, and it's going to be very much a desktop audit. There is a tour that should be done as part of the stage 1 assessment, but that's more just to confirm that the interaction of processes is accurate and describes the system accurately. Now, there are 2 options that the auditor has for every item that they review, conforms or concern. Now, concern is going to be anything that represents a disconnect between what the auditor is seeing and the related requirements from the applicable standard. Now, we're going to dig into some of the more common concerns in just a bit here, but everything falls into those 2 categories. Now, once the auditor has completed their review, they'll need a little bit of time to prepare their audit report. There are no official nonconformances that are issued in a stage 1 audit. Again, there's only concerns. Once the report is finished, you'll have a closing meeting to discuss the results, and you will have one of 3 possible outcomes. The auditor will recommend continuance to stage 2 with no concerns. We'll recommend continuance to stage 2 with concerns that need to be followed up on at stage 2. or in rare cases will recommend a repeating of the Stage 1 audit. Now you will be asked to sign an acknowledgement of the results, and you will be given a copy of the completed audit report. Now obviously if there are travel circumstances, etc., it may be a few days before you get the report, but you should expect to be given a copy of the completed audit report. Now in terms of things that can prevent continuance to a Stage 1 audit, let's cover the most important ones. If you have an inadequate or inappropriate interaction of processes, if you have a document that looks like it's canned, if it resembles the Plan, Do, Check, Act diagram from the standard, basically if it is not reflective of what your processes are, that can present an issue. We do recommend that you view the PJR webinar entitled The Interaction of Processes and Its Importance to a Successful Audit. We've definitely tried to provide some resources on getting your IOP as strong as it can possibly be. The IOP, the Interaction of Processes, is one of the best indicators that you understand processes and that you understand the process approach prescribed in ISO 9001 and other similar standards. So we definitely place a lot of importance on it, and we want to make sure that it's been put together appropriately. Another item that can be an issue, an inadequate set of process measurables or a lack of process performance data. Now both of the current versions of ISO 9001 require you to monitor, measure, and analyze your processes. So we view that as every process on your interaction. In our example, there were 6 of them. Every item should be monitored or measured, and there should be performance data available to prove that that monitoring and measurement is ongoing. Now there are some standards that even have minimum requirements for the amount of data that must be available. For example, in TS 16949 you're required to have a year's worth of information. Now for most other standards you have to have enough to show that your process is working. Now there is no magic formula for this, for example in ISO 9001, but we need to see enough information to feel assured that the processes are being monitored and measured. Now some organizations may choose to have a few measures of effectiveness that cover all processes. For example, a lot of companies measure on-time delivery and make the argument that on-time delivery is a measure for multiple processes. That's absolutely considered acceptable. So if that is the approach that you choose to take, it will be accepted in your Stage 1 audit. Again, as long as there is data to show that you're actively tracking that metric. Other items that can represent a problem: an inadequate internal audit. Now, when we look at internal audit records, we're looking for a couple of key things. We want to see that internal audits are planned. We want to see that all processes and related requirements were audited. Oftentimes we'll look at an audit file and we'll see some findings, maybe an audit schedule, but we won't see any notes. We won't see anything that is reflective of the audit process, or we'll see big holes in terms of some processes were assessed and some were not. We'll need to see obviously any nonconformances that were written. We'll need to see that corrective actions are in place for any nonconformances. And obviously we need to make sure that there is an independence in the internal audit process, that people are not auditing their own work. Now, if we have an internal audit program that is not fully implemented, we can generally still recommend a continuance to Stage 2 if first you can confirm you can show us rather that there is a plan to complete the internal audit prior to stage 2. However, bear in mind that you do lose the benefit of feedback on your internal audit process prior to stage 2. So to kind of put this in more plain words, if you can show us that the internal audit is planned and scheduled, we will still permit you to continue to stage 2. If we arrive and the internal audit is neither complete nor scheduled, it will potentially prevent continuance to stage 2. Another item related to internal audit is the internal auditor competency. Now remember, you are required to determine competency requirements for all functions within your system, and that includes conducting internal audits. At times we will have some confusion around this because a lot of companies choose to outsource their internal audit process. Outsourcing the internal audit is completely fine, but it does not excuse you from the responsibility for defining the competency requirement. When we do the stage 1, we're going to ask to see evidence, proof, that your internal auditors meet these competency requirements, and that includes for subcontractors. So again, even if you bring somebody in to do the internal audit for you, it is still your internal audit to manage. Now there are certain industries and standards that require additional provisions for internal auditor competency, so do be sure to read your standard carefully for those types of requirements. An inadequate management review can present a problem. Again, we're going to look at the management review meeting minutes quite carefully. We're going to want to make sure that all of the required inputs and outputs were addressed. Numbers of our clients will put together PowerPoint slides. Now, that's great, and it will show us what you discussed, but bear in mind that management review comes with output requirements too. What were the decisions? What were the conclusions? What were the actions? So we want to see some evidence of those outputs, even if it's kind of hand-scrawled notes. If that's what the outputs are, then that's what they are. Now again, similar to the internal audit, if you've not yet conducted the management review, we can still approve you to continue to stage 2 if we can see that it's been planned, and that it's been planned in such a way that it will be complete prior to the stage 2. But again, you do lose the benefit of feedback on your management review process prior to stage 2 when that is the case. Now, all conclusions that are reached in any audit, including a stage 1 audit, are subject to review by the PJR Executive Committee. And we do this to make sure that the decisions reached are appropriate and fair. Additionally, all of our clients are afforded the right to issue a dispute or appeal of the auditor's decision. Now, that process is discussed in PJR Procedure Pro 10, which is available anytime on our website. If the recommendation that you receive is to repeat the stage 1 audit, we encourage you to work from your audit report to shore up those issues that were raised during the stage 1 audit. You're absolutely permitted to remain in contact with your auditor, with members of the PJR Executive Committee, to make sure that you're on the right path. We absolutely want you to succeed, and we're glad to provide what help we can. If you are recommended to continue on to stage 2, as I mentioned earlier, the conclusion might be with concerns. So make sure that you are working on any concerns that were identified. Failure to address those concerns in many cases will lead to nonconformances during the stage 2 audit. Also, in terms of the time between the audits, We do recommend that you have at least 30 days between the Stage 1 and Stage 2 audits. It's better to have 60 to 75 days. Bear in mind, we do have a 21-day cancellation policy. And more often than not, when there are back-to-back Stage 1 and Stage 2 audits, there's always trouble. And we don't want you to run into any kind of issue. Remember that the Stage 1 audit is intended to separate those companies that are truly ready for Stage 2 assessment from those that are not. So in conclusion, we want you, our clients, to feel confident and comfortable with the Stage 1 audit. The care that's taken in the pre-Stage 1 phase and the mutual support of your auditor and the PGR Executive Committee are intended to help make this process as seamless as possible. We do wish you every success in your certification journey. At this time, I'm going to open the question portion of the dashboard and see if we have any questions today. Okay, well, I'll wish all of you an enjoyable day and weekend to come. Thank you for your attention.